Hello, good evening. My name is Meletius. I'm a cinema workplace engineer. Today, I'll be speaking on telemetry is not a silver bullet, lessons learned from the field. Before I proceed, I would like to talk about the need of OpenTelemetry. OpenTelemetry is needed in observability because it is used in collecting telemetry data, which are used in finding out the behavior of your system or your servers, especially in distributed systems. The telemetry data are very important because it gives you an overview of what your system performance is like, and as well give you that opportunity to take proactive actions to make sure that your systems are running as expected. Now, we were speaking on the vision why OpenTelemetry was created. Now, the first vision why this was created was for unified standard. And what this means is that there have been a lot of promises, about getting single standard for tracing logs and metrics across distributed architectures, systems, environments, depending on where your system is sitting on, whether it is sitting on the cloud or whether it's sitting on premises or whether it is outside of the cloud. So the telemetry has been very important in these environments to gather this data, which gives us an insight of what is going on within our environment. And the reason for this was to make sure that there is a unified monitoring across our environment. And the second vision has come with the vendor freedom. So there have been a lot of promises around lowering the risk on what we can do and how we can standardize the data we collect from this environment. And this has to come with the promises we get from different vendors telling us, how can use this, how we can use this tooling systems or these platforms to achieve this or that. But at the end of the day, it boils down to what we have in place, what we have in our team, how are we going through those processes to make sure that we carry out all the duties we need to keep our systems efficient and performance 100% run without any resource constraint. Now, on the other hand, we have been also be promised that the growing adoption. Now, there have been a lot of adoptions with clouds adopting to different tools and systems, just as we can see, let's see, clouds offerings like Microsoft Azure and AWS, Google Cloud Compute. So there have been a lot of promises around these areas as well. And if we notice, there are some sort of platforms that are standardized for observability. For instance, we have the Datadog, we have Datadog, we have Logic Monitor. Well, the Logic Monitor is not really a big suite for collecting data, but you can use these collectors to try to collect data and to understand what's going on within your environment. And also, there have been a lot of open source projects around OpenTelemetry, and therefore it is very important that a lot of organizations adopt to these green tooling systems and also platform. Rather than going to platforms, best to these tooling systems as they would give us what we need to make sure that our environment are running as we expect. Now, in the real sense of the whole thing, so we are talking about the common pain points and which we have in our various field or experiences, be you engineer, a platform engineer, software engineer, or if you are an SRE engineer, depending on where your position is. So there are challenges we encounter across these disciplines. Now, the first thing I would like to speak about will be the documentation challenges. So there have been a lot of documentation errors, efficiency, making use of obsolete documentations that needs to be upgraded using vendors or using tooling latest updates, which could help us to propel our collection of data using our collectors. And these documentation challenges has brought a lot of gaps and redundancies within teams, within organizations, and within businesses because no one is checking out formal things because people don't really take them seriously. And this has created a lot of issues. So therefore, it is very important to make sure that your documentation is, it's compliant and is treated as a regular activity rather than something that someone needs to pick up maybe once in a time. So it is very important that everyone ensures that the documentation is updated and teams are carrying along to avoid any issues that could impact your environment. Another issue we also face is the boilerplate burden. Now, this has to do with this has to do with the type of software development kits and software development kits we use across to write our codes, be it Java, be it Python, depending on what your organization uses, progressing on the language your team are using. So it is very important that we make sure that the software development kits or tools or IDEs we use integrates with the platform we use. And we need to ensure that we are not using outdated libraries or we are not using outdated codes that could cause an issue in our environment or even break our environment. So these are very important that we make sure that all these are being checked. And we need to also ensure that every developer within the team, every DevOps engineer in the team are using the standard code methodology to avoid problems. Now, lastly, we are going to speak about version complete. Now, when it comes to the version complete, so there have been a lot of incompatibilities that would create a constant friction amongst teams, amongst organizations, and causes a whole lot of issues, especially when trying to ingest data or when trying to collect data or when trying to trace or get logs to check what your system is going all about. So this causes a whole lot of issue because we found out that there have been a lot of issues whereby the version conflicts or due to incapabilities, or it could be that the versions are not compatible with our system. So it is very important that we make sure that all of these are being checked and we make sure that the tooling systems we are using, the versions we use to collect our data within our environment are compatible with our systems. Now, moving forward, we'll be speaking about the scaling headaches, the collectors, and the infrastructure challenges. Now, the first thing I'm going to speak about is bottlenecks. And the OpenTelemetry collector faces performance issues as environment grows. Processing pipeline can't keep up with the data volume. And now this is evident in the situation where you have an environment that is loaded with a whole lot of data, there are a whole lot of storage, and nobody's taking them. There is no collectors monitoring this environment. There is no collector monitoring all these storages. Nobody knows when the storage gets filled up. So it causes a whole lot of problem for some in a lot of environment. I can speak vividly about what happened. So we had a SQL Server environment that we used for our SQL Server and then also for our data warehousing. So we noticed that the cluster storage within this environment was filled up. And because there was no collector monitoring the environment, the the storage got filled up. The disk for the server also get filled up, and this led to crashing of that environment. And this cost a whole lot of huge amount of money for both our business and for our organization. So it is therefore important to make sure that there are collectors deployed across this environment, taking real-time performance and also taking real time performance so that engineers, SREs looking after this environment will be proactively aware of what is going on so that in case of any issues there will be scaling up of and also adding of more storage within the environment to keep the environment up and going. Now, another one I would like us to speak about is the resource hunger. So it is very important to make sure we are not using bustable servers to deploy our collectors because what I have noticed is that bustable servers are not really mostly for demanding environments that consume a whole lot of data because bustable CPUs processors, it's a whole lot of memory and RAM, and this causes a whole lot of issue. So it is very important to make sure that you're using good specs for your environment, stable CPUs that are mainly meant for development and testing environment. So it is important that the businesses, organizations understand that they need something higher. Maybe for instance, enterprise or something that would give them like at least a CPU or even more, depending on what the business requires. But using bustable CPU servers are not recommended, especially for collectors that monitors huge environments that takes your time data. So it's important that organizations scale up and also that's good monitoring with this environment. Another one I'll be speaking about will be the data reliability risk. Now, without careful architecture and data gets dropped or delayed, and single points of failure emerge in critical telemetry parts. And what this means is that we must ensure that while designing this environment, we must make sure that there are no gaps to where we can lose data. And we must make sure that the tooling we are using for this environment are compatible and appropriate so that we will be able to get the monitoring, know what is happening in our environment, understand the performance, and also scale up when needed. And this would help in keeping our environment up and running and put us in a better position that will not cause us any issue in the future or cost us money or put us all in a bigger risk. So it is important that while we are designing our infrastructure or we are designing our environment, so we make sure that all these gaps are being covered to avoid any unforeseen circumstance. Now, I'll be speaking on the gaps between promise and practice. Now, there have been a whole lot of promise and practices, but the question is, are these promises fulfilling what we want? Are we practicing what we preach? Now, I'm going to start with the stage and visualization gaps. Now, OpenTelemetry defines data pipelines, but not end user analytics. Now, there is gaps between what OpenTelemetry gives us and what we can get out of it. Now, it is true that OpenTelemetry helps us to get real-time data in observability that give us a better overview of what is going on in the environment. But what we lack is how does this help a single user? Any dashboards that we can use? Now, this is where we are lacking this area because we need to make sure that there are dashboards like for end users, which they can use to also understand what is going on within their personal work. So it is very important that all of this are being put in check and done properly. Now, secondly, we're speaking about the library quality barriers. Now, we're talking about language, software development kits, and integration policy, which differs widely. And this has to do with type of languages we are using to ingest our data, collecting our data, whether JavaScript. So it's very important we make sure we are using the best programming languages that suits to our needs and business cases as well. Lastly, team education challenges. Onboarding engineers require significant investment, and this is very important because it is easier to onboard engineers to start working on these tooling systems, in data, collecting logs, ingesting them, on trying to triage what is going on the server. But it is very important while we onboard engineers, we provide them the necessary training that would give them that knowledge that would help them excel in this position either as an SRE engineer or as a monitoring specialist, because these are very important that engineers do not only onboard but understand the reason why they are trying a specific environment, what those data are used for, how they can put this as a report and then explain to a wider range what is going on and how they are working proactively to make sure that what the data is giving them are being used as expected. So it is therefore important to make sure, so therefore it is important to invest in training engineers to make sure they are well equipped and also ready to carry on with this task. Here, we'll be speaking about the case study behind the implementation pitfalls. We will talk about the collector failures. Then we talk about the version drift, and last we talk about the monitoring blind spot. The collector failures. Leading software as a service providers face a whole lot of collector crashes, under peak loads, monitoring gaps in apparent critical operations, and this is evident with some software providers where they provide a whole lot of wares that they know are not really compatible with the environment, or they know that what you are using within your environment could proactively impact the software. So it is therefore it's important to make sure that you are using the best softwares that would work as we expect, that will take the data in real time and we can analyze to make informed decisions. Because it is important that when collector fails, it could lead us to bigger issues such as bringing the server down, such as affecting other services that are very important or critical to your business. So it's imperative that we make sure we are investing in the right softwares to collect monitoring within our environment. On the second one, we'll be speaking about the version drift. Now, it is true that weeks can be spent on triaging on issues, maybe library updates, didn't match company code base or whatever. So this is where we need to ensure that there is no incompatibility, there is no compatibility issues within our environment, depending the type of version we are using for getting our logs. So we need to make sure that the version which we are using matches with vendor's requirement or with the tooling system requirement. So it is very important that we are not using something that is not meant for the software, because what this can do is it might work at the first instance, but it won't be able to give you that right result that would help you to succeed in trading the required logs you need to proactively make your environment better. Now, lastly, the monitoring blind spot. A lot of team go there, they just set up the monitoring and then they go to bed, or they just feel like, oh, we have done this, or it is monitoring. And what happens is that most of all these engineers or companies they follow the obsolete way of monitoring servers environment without putting that necessary actions, which has to do with testing the monitoring if it is working, checking the dashboards, triaging, taking logs in real time to understand what is going on, just to make sure that everything works as expected before saying, yes, we have put on this monitoring in this. I think it is very important to carry a sort of testing before closing off and saying, yeah, we are done with this. Because what happens most of the time is these engineers to go and set up the monitoring and then they just leave it and they don't even try checking the methods that are using, if the schemas are outdated, if they need to bring new code version, or if they need to bring something that would help make sure that their monitoring is working as expected. So it is very important to make sure that there is a sort of testing and confirmation before handing off to other tasks. Now, so the lessons I have learned and what really works from my own understanding, I think I would say start small. So why I would say start small is that it is very important that you target critical systems and limit the initial scope before rolling out widely. 2, custom documentation. Investing in internal training tailored to your specific tech stack, depending on the tools you're using to collect your data, is very important. Making sure you understand that tooling, making sure that everybody is involved, making sure that the knowledge base is always 24 hours updated with the latest information, with the latest steps, latest processes, making sure that everybody is part of this as a culture and not just as a team. But it needs to be something that needs to be passed on from first line to the third line to the highest person. So it is important to ensure that putting an internal documentation, not just only for a technical team, but for the whole range, so that anyone that reads the documentation would understand what is being done and what is being said. Now, another thing I would like to speak about is the interactive expansion. I understand that sometimes engineers might want to add a lot of servers just to maybe speed their work or make sure that the monitoring is going as they have expected. I think it's very important that systems are gradually added as the team grows and as everyone gets acquainted with what he or she needs to do. And also, it is very important to add systems only based on the power of your resource environment. And lastly, is the regular review. This is where disciplined monitoring of schemas, resources, and integration points comes in. So it is very important that we regularly for monitoring, we set out time. It could be allocated to different engineers at specific time just to know what is being monitored, to make sure that the data, the performance, the threshold, all of these are being cutting as the team has or as expected. So it is very important that these regular checks are being carried out rather than once in a while. Maybe it could be done maybe every once in a week, maybe every one time, maybe once in a week or twice in a week, depending on the availability of the engineer. So it is very important that this is being carried out and everyone is carried along while this is being done as well. Now, this is the realistic expectation and practical recommendation. Toolkit and not platform. I think it is very important to understand that OpenTelemetry provides powerful components, not a finished observability solution. So it is important that we focus and invest more on the tool rather than on the platform. So what I mean by rather than the platform is you get told, oh, we need to buy Microsoft Azure, you need to buy AWS subscription, depending on the needs. And oh, we have different types of monitoring tools that can help you to scale your business and get what you want and get your data. I don't think that is the best way to go about it because at the end of the day, you end up spending more money on different resources. So I think it's best you go for one tool that is solely built for collecting, tracing, and gathering of metrics of your telemetry data, maybe such as Datadog or what you monitor, this is just an instance, right? So I think it's better you think it's better for organizations and teams go for specific tools rather than going for a platform. Secondly, ongoing investment. Now, success. I would like to read what this headline speaks here. It says that success requires engineering resources, organizational alignment, and understanding system risk. And how I would explain this is success requiring engineering resources means that everyone needs to be trained. Engineers needs to be trained. They need to have the right resource. They need to have the right knowledge. There is no knowledge gap. And also and this has to align with the organization as well, what the organization wants to get out from these engineers, what the expectations are. And at the same time, prioritizing the critical systems, so this knowledge base, the tooling system needs to be prioritized within the critical systems to avoid any, any risk that could cost, that could impact the business or the services. And why organizations are also investing on their engineers. So it is important to make sure that they are also investing on the infrastructure. There are always, an infrastructure review, and also there is always an upgrade, following up with vendors, making sure that the server systems are run on the latest version. I think it is important to put an investment into this because the end goal would lead to a fruitful success, both for the business, but for the engineers, and the systems will be happy if, the right resources are being provided. Now, the last would be the build complete solutions. Now, in as much as there are a whole lot of benefits we can get out of, OpenTelemetry, I think at the same time, it is important to build robust alerting and virtualization layers around OpenTelemetry, because OpenTelemetry just serves as a foundation. But if you have, robust alerting and virtualization layers and other toolings that could help in making the work easier, I think it is very important that these are being considered, because this would help us to actually get that right result which we need. So I would say that businesses, users, engineers needs to put all attention to this, rather than just using one tooling system that does everything. I think it would make sense if they can spread their hands to get other tooling systems to add to what they have as a full complete solution. Conclusively, I would say that OpenTelemetry unlocks control for observability without elementary complexity. And this is where the flexibility comes in. And also, teams must treat observability as ongoing work and not one-time setup, because there needs to be a continuous engineering across teams, across business, across boards, across the managers, the stakeholders. All of them needs to be involved, because they need to be told or be aware of what is going on in the environment. So I think OpenTelemetry offers a great values, and all of this needs to be put in place. And lastly, the pragmatic benefits. And this is iterative approach, this is practical approach of national realizing real world values beyond hype, making sure that, everything they need is being done. So I think it is very important that we make sure that there are accurate technical documentations, engineers are being trained, and there is a good investment on the tooling system which we use to triage, collect our data, and also proactively put our environment in a good state. So I would say that OpenTelemetry is a great asset to use. It brings a whole lot of benefits and also a whole lot of true values to businesses. So businesses not only need to invest on platform, but excessively on the tooling systems that works best for their services. Thank you. It was nice speaking to you all.